So today in our special Dover Forest edition, we have with me Mr. Chua or Chintat as he prefers to be addressed by, and he's been a advocate of the preservation of Dover Forest. So could you introduce maybe a brief introduction about yourself and also the works that you have been doing?
Yeah, hi, I'm Chintat. So I've been advocating for Dover Forest conservation since early last year, February 2021. I live just next to the forest. Yeah, and on my father's side, so 3 generations from my father's side have been living in the forest area uh, where there was a kampong last time. From 1905 up to about the late 1970s. So since I live so near and I have this connection to the area, so I thought my wife and me, so we thought that we couldn't just sit by and not do anything when the forest will be developed. Yeah.
So I think in your website, right, doverforest.sg, you did mention Dover Forest as a secondary regrowth forest. Yeah. Could you explain what secondary forests are and maybe the ecological significance of it?
Yeah, okay. So there are two types of forests in Singapore. So primary and secondary. So primary forests are those that have never been cleared before, since way back, maybe even before the British are here, maybe even before the first indigenous Malays are here. So those are continuous forests throughout history. So those type of forests, primary forests, are very rare. So currently we have only two small patches. So one in Bukit Timah and one in the central catchment area. So whatever other forests that we see outside of these two areas, there will be secondary forests, which are forests that have grown back on land that has been completely cleared before, for many reasons, for kampongs, for plantations, for all sorts of reasons. So there are forests that have grown back. So sometimes they are also called secondary regrowth forests. So Dover Forest is an example of that.
So in the case of Dover Forest, right, you say that it has been regrowth, all the greenery has grown back. So along with a lot of wildlife, could you just maybe sort of describe what wildlife we can see in the forest?
Yeah, so there was a question that I haven't addressed in your previous. Where you say what is the significance?
Yeah, the ecological significance.
Yeah, secondary forest. So I think throughout the world, so nowadays because of so much deforestation going on, so secondary forests are actually have greater and greater significance because a lot of the forests that we find now are secondary forests, and a lot of times this sort of secondary regrowth forests, they are more well adapted to our current situation of climate change and all that. Yeah, so because primary forests are forests that have grown since past times, so maybe they do not adapt as well to our current situation. Yeah, so if we want to preserve forests, secondary forests now have a maybe more outsized role in conservation. Yeah, and what was the second question?
Yeah, it's about the wildlife. I've read a lot about the endangered species, right? So what could you just explain to us, like what are some of the key wildlife that are at risk right now if these forests were to be destroyed?
Yeah, so I consider one of my crowning achievements since last year to be the discovery of nationally critically endangered ficus virus in Dover Forest. Yeah, so currently there are only about 23 recorded mature specimens of ficus virus. So out of these 23, one is in Dover Forest East, and two more are in Dover Forest West. Yeah, so that is for the flora. So on the animal side, the fauna side, we have quite a lot of bird life here. So recently we found that there were changeable hawk eagles that were breeding in the forest. So the juvenile recently just fledged in April this year. So we also have the oriental pied hornbills also breeding in the forest, and their juvenile also just fledged in April. So we also have the globally critically endangered straw-headed boo residing in the forest. We also have other raptors that pass through the forest. So on the mammal side, we have bats. So recently, the surveyors, the Environmental Management and Monitoring Plan surveyors commissioned by HDB. So they found an endangered bat in the forest, but I can't remember the species exactly.
Was it the baseline study, or is it like another separate?
Yeah, it's a
Separate
study.
survey.
It is called Environmental Management and Monitoring Plan.
Oh, okay.
It's a study to to sort of figure out how they would manage the plants and animals when they eventually clear the forest.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, you did mention about adaptation, and I think I read this Straits Time article about Dover Forest, and they say that they mentioned this urban nature has the potential to thrive when the HDBs are built, right? Do you find this do you agree with this, or is it like very oxymoronic expression to you?
Yeah, I would tend to think that it is oxymoronic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have wildlife. It's not that we do not have wildlife in urban areas. We do have, but there are some forest-dependent species that just cannot thrive in urban areas. So an example would be the changeable hawk eagles that I brought up just now. So they are forest-dependent species. They are ambush predators who like to hide somewhere in the trees and swoop down on their prey in the forest. So without a contiguous big patch of a significant patch of forest, they can't really thrive. So if we clear all these secondary forests and replace them with urban developments, much like what we are doing now, so we'll be losing a lot of these forest-dependent species. Yeah, so that's what I think. And yeah, I also think that we should keep more of the wild things in our city-state. So because what I'm seeing now, whenever I look around, is that the landscape has become more and more homogeneous. So everywhere you look, it is the same. It is the same type of parks designed to the same parameters. Yeah. So it's become more and more homogeneous. We need more of the wild things.
Yeah, there's something there that really caught my attention. I think this thing about homogeneity, right? You have a lot of Singaporeans now very close to greenery, but their perception of greenery is like parks or park connectors, right?
Yeah.
Do you think on like let's say do you think Singaporeans have this danger of oversimplifying what nature is?
Yeah, I think so. So currently, the slogan is "City in Nature." So this slogan has evolved a bit. Previously, it was Garden City, and then maybe City in a Garden or something like that. And so currently now it is City in Nature. I think we should swap over the words. It should be nature in city, I think. Even this nature in our city is sort of, very controlled by humans. Yeah, so we dictate what can grow. We dictate, what species grow and what species don't. And we get rid of wild forests and replace them with parks that are, highly manicured. So I think city in nature might not be so true. Think about it.
So moving on from that question, right? I think now that residents are moving closer and closer to these green and blue spaces, do you find that maybe the ecological systems, like your forests and all, will they be like overstressed by this human activity?
I think in a way they will be. So there was one recent example last year. So in Clementi Forest, because of the COVID situation, a lot of people they need an outlet. So instead of going overseas for their tours, So a lot of people have been taking up hiking, and there was critically endangered terrestrial orchid, which is quite small and which looks like a grass. And they have been trampled nearly all of them were trampled by hikers. And so much so that in the end parks had to come in to rescue what remains of this small patch of orchids. Yeah, so I think there will be an impact, but I would rather actually that people go into these areas and see for themselves. So rather than we keep it in a glass cage, and people don't interact with these wild areas. So we need people to go in. We need people to see for themselves these areas. Maybe with some kind of regulation or some kind of understanding that they should look out for things. Yeah, we need people to go in because people don't care for what they don't know.
Yeah, and
So
isn't
I
it
think there are
yeah.
pros and cons.
Yeah, so pros and cons, right? I think it's also a dilemma with regulation, right? Should we have more regulation or should we allow more laissez-faire kind of exploration into it?
Yeah. So I think maybe it is not either or.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we need a bit of both. Yeah, but maybe not overdo either one. Yeah.
Okay. So I think also since you have been on the ground for the last year or so, how has the people on the ground, how have their mindsets changed? Or do you start to see more people like, as more news articles start coming out, they start feeling more feeling like they have a sense of belonging to this place and they want to continue advocating for it? How has the um perception or sentiments on the ground been?
Um, I think I'm not so sure about what others think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I've been doing tours in the forest since January this year. So the motivation was to get people to go into the forest, and we show them what are the endangered species in the forest, what are the endangered plants, what are the things that urban folks like us don't usually see. Yeah, so I get the feeling that after these tours, when people emerge from the forest, they have a feeling that this is something precious because all these wild things, we don't get to see them in parks.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't get to see them normally if we don't venture into the forest, which most of us don't. Yeah, so I get the feeling that after my walks, people tend to care more about the forest because they've seen it for themselves. Yeah.
Are they like quite because all of us are like urban dwellers, right? And then we go into this kind of very undisturbed environment. Do they get a shock when they first go into like the forest itself?
Actually, they don't. Maybe shock, as in maybe when they find the forest ants attacking them. The ants were ferocious. The ants are ferocious in the forest. They tend to climb up your legs. Yeah, so I think in a sense they get a bit irritated by these things. Yeah, but my feeling is that the focus is more on, oh, these are the things that are in the forest. So, wow, these are the things that I don't really see. Oh, you mean there are eagles in Singapore or something like that? Yeah, so I feel very glad that I have the opportunity to show people these things. And when they come out, they have a better idea of what is going on in these wild places. Yeah, so shock, maybe not. Maybe shock as in when they first enter the forest, they feel that, oh, the temperature here is so much different from the outside. It's so much cooler. Yeah, maybe shock in a good sense that way. Yeah, that was the first impression that a lot of people have.
Even the kids as well, because that time when I saw you do your guided tour, there were a lot of kids.
Yeah. The kids were doing well. Yeah, so they were going around, and because kids have a lower height, so they tend to see things that you don't usually see. Then they point out insects in the leaf litter, and they say, "Hey, there's something here. There's something over there." It's so nice to have kids there because we have this height and we don't usually see things that are low. Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, for the last question, right? Since you have been doing all these guided tours on private and personal capacity, you didn't have a lot of backing or a lot of support um, from, like, let's say, like an authority or an organization. So what is some maybe advice that you can give to people that may be championing for the environment, or youths that are, concerned about all these developments in Singapore?
Yeah, I think nowadays, although I'm a private citizen, there's something called social media, which last time we didn't used to have. So I think this is the main tool for private citizens who want to do their own advocacy. So make full use of social media, and reach out to as many people as you can. Make more friends over social media. Yeah, and you can do things like you can make some publications. So I've been doing a sticker set, about the various species in Dover Forest. Yeah, and just show people what is in this place that you're advocating for. Show people what is valuable that is inside, and give people a reason to care for the area. Yeah, so social media is the most powerful tool for a private advocate, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's how we even got this interview started. It was through social media as well. Yeah.
Precisely, yes.
Okay, so we have come to the end of this interview, and we'd like to thank Chin Tat for his time today on a Sunday afternoon.
Thank you, Gabriel, for taking your time out of your weekend when you're free from your national service. Thank you so much.
So you can learn more about this movement on doverforest.sg, and you can also find the sticker pack or the bundle of 6 stickers that Chin Tat has been mentioning on his Instagram page as well. Yeah, so the links will be placed in the article as well as throughout our Instagram page. So thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Gabriel.